Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Fares, and as the war between the IDF and Hamas continues, we take a look at the economic implications. Joining us in the studio is Tal Kainan, CEO and founder of investment management firm Clarity Capital and former senior Israeli Air Force officer. Tal, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're going to take a look at a report that we made, but before we do that, can you give us a quick sense of how exactly, what the economic implications are of this war for Israel?
Yeah, so I'd start by saying we go into this on very solid economic footing, and there certainly are costs of this war, and we'll, I guess, get into them as we speak. But they'll be expressed in terms of influencing our growth rate, not setting us backward.
Okay.
I think that's kind of the appropriate context.
All right. Well, let's first hear a report made by Daniel Roth.
Great.
Tensions are high and fear is palpable amongst Israelis. As street violence increased in the wake of the murders of 3 Jewish teens and 1 Palestinian burned alive, violent escalation has increased with rockets shot by militant Palestinians in Gaza and Air Force bombardments by Israel. The costs are high. According to Israeli business source Globes, if the current operation is similar to 2009's Operation Cast Lead, which included ground troops and which took the lives of nearly 1,500 people, the financial cost will be nearly $2.5 billion, including costs to the army and expected property damage. As well, the heightened amount of rockets and sirens are taking a toll on businesses in the south of the country, where absenteeism from work is anywhere from 10 to 30%.
There are no people in my town. People disappeared. Shops are empty and businesses don't work. I really don't know how it will end.
In Tel Aviv, too, where rockets have been aimed in recent days, the economic impact is felt.
On the one hand, it's not so scary. Only once in a few hours there's a siren, and then people enter the shelters. But for tourists, it's hard. And residents who are used to living in the south or north, they have a trauma from previous wars. Some people get stressed and cry. Some workers in the bar didn't work yesterday. Some people during the siren ran away. 2 fattened here on the beach.
Overall, property damage claims have hit nearly $3 million. While the economic cost remains to be calculated, the human cost of ongoing violence will remain untold.
So Tal, Operation Protective Edge has from the beginning really relied on airstrikes. How would a ground invasion affect the Israeli economy, the macroeconomy?
Yeah, so I want to start again just by saying we come into this on very solid footing. You know, we have a certainly European level GDP rates, but emerging market growth rates. If we see an economic impact, a long-term economic impact from this round of hostilities, it's going to be in our growth rate. It's not actually going to set us back. That's the best I can estimate. I think it's a good question on a ground operation. I think the main cost component of any military operation of this scale is going to be expressed in reserve call-ups. And for the time being, there hasn't been a massive reserve call-up, and so the costs of it have been curtailed. For the time being, I think airstrikes has been the most expensive. If you talk about the direct bill to the Israeli military, it's been in the airstrikes. So I'd say if there is a ground offensive, that's probably where the price tag starts going up significantly.
I see. Okay, well, the Iron Dome that we've seen actually essentially getting a lot of these rockets out of the air takes a lot of money. We actually made a report on this, and we can continue the discussion after.
Great.
Thanks.
As violence escalates with Israeli bombs hitting Gaza and rockets from Gaza flying toward Israeli cities, the Iron Dome system comes into full effect. The Iron Dome missile defense system has been protecting major population zones in Israel since 2011. The anti-missile system is costly, though. Since 2011, the Pentagon has put in hundreds of millions of dollars and an expected $220 million for fiscal year 2014. According to Israeli business source Globes, each deployed Tamir missile interceptor costs $100,000. In recent days, Iron Dome, designed by Rafael Advanced Defense Systems, has had a 90% success rate.
So Tal, can you give us a clearer understanding of the direct military costs of Operation Protective Edge?
Sure. If we start with the Iron Dome, first of all, the Iron Dome costs much less than than the popular conception is to operate. So it's not a major component of the cost, and certainly in terms of bang for the buck, we'll talk later about kind of secondary and tertiary costs of the economy. It's really allowed us to continue functioning almost completely as an economy as this has gone on, even as we're under rocket fire. The major component is the air campaign. So the precision munitions that are being released are expensive. So you figure if we've attacked 2,000 targets and you figure about maybe $200,000 per mission, we're talking about several $100 million in expense. Again, in the grand scheme of things, it's something that is quite digestible to an economy of Israel's size. But I think that's the major component. Iron Dome is probably several tens of millions of dollars, if that.
If they were to bring in more reserves to do a ground invasion, I mean, how would that affect the economy?
Right. So once reserves are called up in big numbers, tens of thousands of reserves, then I would say all bets are off. That's a very different. So there's a direct cost. I think the Defense Ministry quotes about $200 a day, or we're speaking in dollars, for actual pay for reservists. But that's obviously a very small component. Fuel, food, logistics.
It's everything around the reserves, basically.
Yeah. So once we do that, I think that's a very different scenario.
Is there any kind of estimate of how much this conflict is costing us?
So, we threw together something at the office which comes out not very far from what the finance ministry is saying. We're talking about close to $500 million. I think they're saying about $400 million. So certainly, again, not to minimize that, but certainly digestible in an economy of Israel's size.
Well, as much as it has been digestible, at the same time, there are businesses down south close to the periphery of Gaza that are affected. Absolutely. We have a report on this as well.
Great.
6 months ago, two brothers from the Netivot, near the Gaza Strip, set up a new entertainment center, games, club, and even a spa. For 6 months, all went well. This is how the bar looked like at nights. But then, Israel launched Operation Protective Edge.
The first day you try to soak it up, the second day you also try to soak it up.
How many people came during these days?
If I tell you, you laugh. 4 people.
They had been counting on the summer. After a few days, when no one came, the brothers approached to the Homefront command to try and close the business during the operation. But then they discovered they could not, because they have a room providing protection against Hamas rockets.
I went to the municipality and to the Homefront command. They told me, you have to work. What does it mean to work?
Who told you to work?
A directive from Homefront Command. They know that if you'll open, no one will come. Why close you down and then they'll have to pay you for lost business days?
They is the state that asks its people to be patient. But, the brothers feel, tries in every way it can to evade compensating small businesses which lose money because of what Israeli calls the situation. In the meantime, the brothers have decided to close their business temporarily to save money on costs.
I pay the rent on taxes, I pay VAT, I pay property tax. What will happen to us? When the end of the month comes, I need to give checks. Those checks have to be paid. How can I, without working for maybe a month, what can I do? When I have to pay 400,000 shekels in debts, what can I do? How can I repay this money? I cannot work, and I still have to pay everyone. How can I deal with that?
Officially, after the last operation in Gaza in 2012, the state paid compensation to small businesses. But the money arrived only after 6 months.
After the last operation, I received compensation of around 5,000 shekels. It did not cover my losses.
What's 5,000 shekels to a coffee shop that has to pay its suppliers, has to pay taxes, rent, and wages?
It's kind of a hump on our backs that it'll take years to straighten.
In the marine in Ashkelon, just north of the Gaza Strip, they waited for this summer desperately. They still carry the hump from the last operation. A World Cup summer is always a good chance to increase income. So they bought television screens, hired new workers, and invested money.
I already spoke to my bank this morning. I asked them to be patient because I have an overdraft in my account. If no one will find a way to deal with small businesses like mine, I don't believe they'll survive. They'll have to shut down, my business included. If I won't bring money from the outside and the state won't help me, this business will shut down or I'll have to sell. A report by I-24 News editor Amir Ben David. So, Now, we basically saw that these businesses obviously are under a lot of stress. I understand that you're also related to this. The founder, am I correct, of the Koret Foundation, which basically helps fund small businesses in the south of Israel. And you recently had a new operation, essentially giving funding to these businesses. Can you give us a little bit more information?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not the founder. I'm the chairman of Koret.
Yeah.
And what Koret has done is essentially develop a model for small business and micro-enterprise lending in developed economies like Israel's. And so far has facilitated over $320 million in loans across the country, not only in the south. We did launch a campaign earlier this week where we've made 25 million shekels as a start available to small businesses in the south. Essentially, this is a bridge. I mean, in the report, we heard about government relief programs, tax relief, and maybe some direct cash relief to some of these businesses. And we heard also about the bureaucracy that kind of holds that up. So essentially, we're going to be bridging, essentially targeting companies with up to 100,000 shekels in loans and bridging them between qualification for these loans and actually getting the government loans. So essentially, that's where we'll fit in. And we'll see if we need to. We'll grow that program as well, because you're right. Businesses in the south are suffering. Businesses across the country are suffering, but particularly in the south.
But as we just saw in this in the last report.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, we're going to go to another report, which basically is going to take a look at other people within Israel, besides the Gazans and the Israelis, who are also suffering from the current operation. Approximately 23,000 workers from the Palestinian Authority are employed in neighboring Jewish communities in the West Bank. As most of these workers are between 18 and 29 years old, their support directly impacts both immediate and extended families as well as their communities. And as the economy of the Palestinian Authority suffers over 20% unemployment, their contribution is crucial. The latest flare-up of violence between the IDF and Hamas following the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli teens has led to the tightening of security, separating areas controlled by the Palestinian Authority from Israel. As the initial kidnapping was followed by other kidnapping attempts and knifings, thousands of workers have been deterred from serving in the Jewish communities that employ them. A real estate contractor told I-24 News, "The situation is very difficult. Of the workers that actually make it, most are delayed at checkpoints due to the security situation. Hebron is closed, and many of those coming from East Jerusalem are also unable to come." The average daily wage of Arabs working in Jewish communities throughout the West Bank is $46 a day, about 88.3% higher than in the Palestinian Authority's economy. The potential daily income of all the Arabs employed in neighboring Jewish communities is $1.1 million. Annually, this comes to more than $291 million, nearly 9% of the total annual budget of the Palestinian Authority. A hit to this source of income would be detrimental to the workers and their families and ultimately impact the Palestinian Authority as well. Any comments on that report?
Yeah, so look, clearly we as Israelis have a stake in the Palestinian economy, and the Palestinian economy is suffering as a result of everything that's going on right now. So that is definitely what I'd call an indirect cost of the conflict, both to the Palestinians and to the Israelis.
Right. Beyond that, also in terms of secondary costs of this operation, what else do we see? I mean, in terms of tourism, surely tourism is down.
Yeah. So the Bureau of Tourism is quoting 30% kind of year-on-year decrease in hotel bookings. Not surprising. Tourists are obviously deterred from coming here at a time like this. The
tourist sector, if I'm not mistaken, is about 7.3% of GDP.
I think that's right. Yeah, so significant.
Right.
And this is high season, of course.
Right.
So that's all tough. And if you're looking at the international press, we don't look very good. I'm not sure we earn that problem, but it's there. And to the extent that this furthers any kind of calls to avoid doing business with Israeli companies, that's definitely a threat.
Do you have any final comments regarding Clary Capital's perspective on the situation?
Well, I'd say from our perspective, there are industries, particularly the export industries, technology, what we do in financial services, that are by and large unaffected by what's going on. And I think that's great and that's important. It's an achievement of the IDF and of Iron Dome. Certainly if we could get a deal that would stop these rounds in the future, wonderful. But for the time being, I think this is, at least in economic terms, manageable.
Okay, and any kind of positive note that you want to leave your clients with?
A positive
And our
note.
viewers, for that matter?
Yeah, listen, I would say at the end of the day, life goes on. This is the reality here. It's becoming, unfortunately, less and less unique to Israel. This is something that I think more and more of the world is being exposed to. And I think, like anything, we adjust and we learn to live with it. And
the economy has kind of come to adjust to it as
absolutely.
well.
I think the economy remains robust. I don't think this is going to be a major blip on in Israeli economic history.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Tal Kainan, CEO and founder of Clarity Capital, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having
That's
me.
the end of our economy edition today. Thank you very much for watching. Continue to watch us next week and follow us on Twitter as well. Thank you.